Okay, so this is a video from Rednu. As you can see, it's not doing too good likewise. 176 dislikes to 193 dislikes. Yeah, 193 likes. And he says, this was the worst. Wuthering Waves 1.3 story thoughts. Now, I've talked to Rednu before about his thoughts on the Wuthering Waves story, and he's not very happy with it. He's a bit like Cap, where, he doesn't like a lot of the loopholes and stuff going on in the story, and that's totally fine. I think, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. As I always say in a lot of my videos, people can think whatever they want about the Wuthering Waves story, but I'm really interested to see what kind of, gripes he had with the story, and just stuff in particular that he had a problem with the, Black Shores and the shorekeeper, whatever. So let's take a look what he has to say.
My thoughts on Wuthering Waves 1.3
Oh, he's at
story.
the area bit as well.
It sucked.
I'm honestly shocked that he didn't like it. I honestly think that is the best aside for Act 6 so far. Yeah, I definitely think that it was a very, very decent story. Now, I could see an argument for, Mount Firmament 1.1 being a bit better. But again, I think the Black Shores was the best one out of them, in my personal opinion. But again, a lot of people don't agree with that, and yeah.
It was pretty ass, dude. I ain't gonna lie, this was the cheesiest, corniest, most cringe story I've seen in a while.
I mean,
1.1 story.
To be fair, he has a point there. I think that, a lot of the people saying that it wasn't good do have a point in saying that it was kind of cheesy and it was kind of tropey and had a lot of stuff that was, very predictable, and, we see it in a lot of mediums. But I think it's more whether you like that kind of thing or not. Me personally, I don't care. I'll watch that. I'll, read it. I'll play it, whatever. I don't mind, this kind of tropey, cheesy stuff. But again, it seems like Rednu and some other people don't like that kind of thing. Honestly, I see where they're coming from, and I do agree with their takes, but I still enjoyed it. Yeah, exactly. There's a difference between thinking this was a perfect story and thinking that this was just enjoyable. And I think that's where I sit. I don't think this is perfect. I don't think this is you got some stories out there like Berserk and stuff, which is you must read this. It's the best fiction, no doubt, kind of thing. Whereas this, I'm not going to say this is peak fiction, peak cinema, or whatever. It was just good, in my opinion, and I enjoyed it. And I think that's the main thing. If you enjoy it, then it's probably good. But yeah, it seems like he doesn't like it.
Was so much better. I can't believe anyone who actually paid attention to what happened here would ever think that 1.1 story, or this was a step up compared to 1.1. 1.1 clears this easily.
Again, I can definitely see that opinion. I think that 1.1 was a very, very good story. I think that this story was 100% better than a lot of the early release stuff. And yeah, I think 1.1, good. And honestly, I could see it beating, the Black Shores. But again, I do think that the Black Shores was still a very, very good story.
This story was so fucking dumb. Okay, so shorekeeper apparently been with us for this entire time. Hoda comes from the Necrostar to the port city of Guishu to kind of beckon us to the Black Shores. Then we get blacked out by what's-her-face, by shorekeeper, brought to the Black Shores mysteriously. Then we get this whole learning what the Black Shores are, right? Learning what the Tethys system is, which is a supercomputer, basically Jarvis, right? That is, yeah, or Cerebro, responsible for foretelling and telling everyone about the lament so that we could prepare and essentially avoid it, right? Avoid a calamity.
Yeah.
The lament and the Necrostar, dude, I need to parse through this because there's just so many details, just weird, useless details floating in my head. I want to make sure I'm right about it.
I get that quite a bit, kind of trying to bring all of your thoughts together, especially for a story. It can be very hard, whether you're being negative or positive about it. But I think, yeah, there is some very valid points that I've heard from him, just kind of in my own time, that I think are very valid. And I think that, he's probably going to go into them in this video. But again, I definitely think that a lot of the stuff with the Necrostar and the Tethys system, I thought it was actually pretty decent. I liked it. I enjoyed seeing a lot of the lament being, replayed and people having to go through the suffering of it being replayed. Also, you can't have the good without the bad. Not saying the story quest needed to be the bad, but there's not a single piece of fiction that's perfect. Yeah, I think that's true. I think not any single piece of fiction is perfect, as you say. It's not there's always something wrong with it, if you get what I mean. And I think that's the case with the Black Shores as well.
It all comes together is so dissatisfying. Oh my god. Okay. So one thing that was really bothering to me was shorekeeper, who was part of Tethys, right? Yeah. Was a projection of Tethys, beckons us to the Black Shore, and then suddenly comes out of Tethys as a core, right? Her real body's there, and So she's basically like outside of it. But now the whole conflict is like, okay, we need to put her back in. We need to put her back in to the core of Tethys so that I guess she could help gather data about the Necrostar.
I think like the whole point of it was just getting anything in the core. I think the original kind of plan for the Tether system was to actually lure the rover into it, because obviously the rover was the original leader of the Black Shores, and I think she is now the leader of the Black Shores again. I think that was the original plan, and I think I spoke to Amethyst as well about this, who, you know, he likes to get into a lot of the lore kind of stuff, and he said about like a lot of the voice lines being said in the story about, you know, a backup plan. They talked about a backup plan. The Tether system said, you know, backup plan initiated, and took the shorekeeper whenever she fell into the Necrostar black hole, whatever you want to call it. And I think that, you know, the original plan was the rover, and I don't think like the story was about getting her back in. I think it was just about getting something to stabilize it and neutralize it. And whether the shorekeeper was that, you know, kind of fix, I thought that's pretty cool. I thought that, you know, it's a kind of self-sacrificing kind of thing, which again, in my opinion, is cool. Again, it's kind of tropey. There's been a lot of stuff in the past that have been like very self-sacrificing, and there's been characters or side characters that have died or whatever to save a planet, to save a world, to save, you know, a country or whatever is going on. And I thought it was pretty cool.
About the lament so that we could prevent the one that's coming. And so we put her back in, and then Rover's like, wait, hold on. You have a pair of tits. I can't put you back in the machine because that means I can never f you again. So
again, I don't think that was exactly the case with that. I definitely think that, you know, it was kind of weird how she wanted to pull the shorekeeper back out. But again, I don't think she was actually expecting the shorekeeper to go in there in the first place. Like, obviously, you know, we fell into the black hole and we kind of just accepted our fate at that point. We're like, no, I'm going. And then obviously the shorekeeper grabbed us, turned us around, and then she went in. And obviously we let out a little bit of a scream and we're like, no, don't go. So again, I don't think like the rover exactly wanted to put her in there and like changed her mind. I don't think she wanted her to go in there in the first place. I think that she wanted, or he, or whatever kind of, you know, I say this quite a lot, especially whenever I was making videos about the story. I keep referring to the rover as he or she or whatever. I refer to it as she, I refer to them as she just because I play female rover in the story. But I think that she, you know, didn't exactly want the shorekeeper to be in there. I think she wanted a different, like, alternative method of kind of fixing the tether system and fixing whatever's going on over there. But I don't think that, you know, it was a massive, like, change of mind that she wanted to get her out. I think she wanted to get her out from the start. I don't think either of them wanted to go into the tether system and kind of, you know, be this kind of core for the tether system. Yeah, I thought it was obvious. Yeah, I mean, again, he's entitled to his own opinion, and maybe there's some stuff that I missed out in the story, which again, I could be completely wrong. But again, I do think that, you know, especially with a lot of the past with the shorekeeper and rover, obviously the shorekeeper can't feel emotions or anything because she is an AI. Although it does seem like she was starting to get a bit of emotions later on in the story, which again, it could be a kind of symbol of, like, you know, the AI kind of evolving or something like that. But the thing is, with Rover, you know, she has her own emotions, and she's obviously very emotionally attached to the shorekeeper, which obviously she can be. She's a human, or, well, so far as we think she's a human. So she has emotions, and obviously wanted to save the shorekeeper, considering their long, long past. Even though she doesn't remember it, they still have this connection from, you know, I think it's 20 years ago that they mentioned the exact time, which again, I thought was very cool. Rover didn't want to sacrifice someone for the system, exactly. I think they wanted to find a different, you know, solution, which obviously they did at the end of the story.
So we go back to, like, Tethys, and then we rip her out. We beat the fuck out of Tethys, and we take shorekeeper out. We save her. She's not supposed to be a mere tool. Apparently, she's like, I think she sounds like and feels like a robot, some kind of artificial human that was made by Rover for this explicit purpose of, like, looking after the Black Shores while she would, like, go out and get milk, right? Rover would go out.
Yeah, I definitely think that was a little bit weird how she was kind of, like, attached to her so much, even though she built her for that specific purpose to keep the Black Shores safe. I did think that was weird how she wanted to save her afterwards. But again, I think it was more of the fact that she didn't want her to go in there in the first place, and that she thought there was some kind of alternative, you know, method to it. And obviously they had the whole scene of, like, the confession and stuff like that, which obviously added a lot of emotions to Rover's kind of understanding and thinking about this. And yeah, Rover taught Shorekeeper emotions back when the Black Shores was first founded, hence why Shorekeeper cared about Rover so much and watched over them for so long, and why she ended up refusing the process of putting Rover into the system. So are you saying that there's, like, lore in the story? Like, is there like a page or a bit of like cutscene or whatever, like kind of proving this. It would be interesting to see if that was the case. Because again, this has been a very important point that people have brought up is does this AI have emotions or not? Which, at face value, no. But if there's some kind of deeper, understanding or deeper fact to it, I guess, yeah, like maybe there was, and that would make a lot of sense in the story.
And get milk and rove the stars for, like, I guess a solution that's different from sacrificing the shorekeeper. But in the end, like, the shorekeeper is still the core of Tethys. It's a lot of weird fucking details. But okay, so we do that, right? We rip her out, we put her back in.
Yeah, so in a way, Rover taught Shorekeeper about emotions. However, I don't know if Shorekeeper started to feel emotions. But where is that? Is it said anywhere in the story? Do you have like a moment in time where it's actually said? Because I'm interested in like whether they actually say that. Because if she does, then obviously that tells us a lot about how the Shorekeeper was feeling at the time, and it kind of solves a lot of the problems that people have had with how does the Shorekeeper even feel emotions in the first place. But so far, like yeah, if you've got any evidence behind that, that would be very cool.
We put her back in, then we rip her out. Sorry, and then all of a sudden at the very end, it turns out we never needed her, and that there was some other frequency that we could rely on to do the exact same job as the shorekeeper, and everything's all Gucci. Now she's alive, she's well, she's in physical form, and everything is like happy ever after, right? We can have as much sex as we want with the
when Shorekeeper started to cry, and also in one of Shorekeeper's voice lines in their profile, which requires a higher bond level. Okay, I'll look at that after we whenever we get back into the game. I might have a higher bond level. I don't know. I've been using it, so I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, about that point with the whole the shorekeeper going into the Tethys system and obviously it being all fine afterwards, I think there could be an explanation behind that. And I did try to bring my point across to him as well by saying that I think that the Tethys system and also maybe the shorekeeper as well thought that the best way to actually fight the lament, which is the main purpose of the Tethys system, or one of the main purposes. Obviously, it's a big supercomputer, so it does like a lot of things. But one of the main reasons it was built was to test the lament and kind of replay it and find some things out about it so they can fight it in the future. I think that the Tethys system thought that this was a way to kind of what do you call it, like get to the solution quicker. I think that what they did in the end, they put in a neutral kind of like lament situation or whatever, which obviously calmed down the Tethys system, and the errors and the glitches and stuff stopped, which again I think is totally fine. I think that makes sense. And obviously the Tethys system didn't want to do that in the first place because it was the least efficient way of doing it, which I think is why that happened. But obviously they didn't explain that well enough in the story. So I hope that Kura Games, do improve on telling us a little bit more about that. And I think that's why a lot of people are more annoyed, is because they didn't explain it well enough. That's the main reason, I think. But again, I could be totally wrong, and there could be a totally different reason behind this. And Rednu obviously thinks that this wasn't a very good, part of the story. Which again, I do think that if there was no outside reason behind this, then yeah, it is a pretty bad, thing to be adding just at the end of the story. Like, oh yeah, by the way, we fixed it all. Which again, I don't think that's great. Oh yeah, without a doubt, the system states that the lament was that it uses the lament to fight the lament, which makes sense in why it wants to continue doing it, doing what it was doing and not changing its ways suddenly. Yeah, exactly. I definitely think that, the Tethys system now, although it's a really strong computer system, is not going to be able to do much now, It's going to be able to, like, do a little Google search if you want to. But apart from that, I don't think it's going to be able to fight a lot of lament stuff, which again could have effects with the story later on, and maybe we'll have to find a different way of dealing with the laments instead of, messing up the Tethys system by playing it over and over again, or maybe finding a different core or something so that it can actually continue with this testing. But I think it still is testing with it. It's just like much less intense, which means, the research time is going to take much longer, which I think does make sense. But again, they don't explain it well enough.
And we can avoid the lament, and everything's good. Everything's all
again
good.
I don't think we're avoiding a lament. I think that's just like they're avoiding the Tethys system like kind of blowing up. But Rednu didn't like the story in the first place, so he was biased before he started. Oh, okay.
And it's just
well,
so
again, I don't
bullshit.
know. Maybe
this story
maybe that's the case.
exists in a vacuum, and it's not a good story either. It's a lot. It's a lot of shit. It's so bad.
I mean, again, I think that's very like an opinionated thing. I definitely think that lots of people, I can understand why you wouldn't enjoy the story of the shorekeeper and the kind of romance side of it. Obviously, some people like it, some people don't. And Rednu obviously just doesn't like this. But me personally, and I know a lot of other people did enjoy this story. And obviously it's because, a lot of this is because it's a gacha game. Let's be real here. They want you to pull on the shorekeeper. they want you to pull on these banners, so they're going to make you as like emotionally invested in these characters as possible. So I think that was to be expected with the story of the shorekeeper, and also with a lot of the trailers that we saw for the shorekeeper. But again, obviously that doesn't mean like it can't be a good story though. I definitely thought it was, decent for, the purpose that it was created for. But out of like all stories ever, obviously it's not the best story, but it's still pretty good and I enjoyed it very, very thoroughly.
Sentence in 1.3, nothing happened. Yeah, nothing happened. Literally nothing happened.
Yeah,
Basically, 1.3, we got another wife. Yeah, we got a robot waifu. We got a robot blue butterfly waifu. She's blue butterfly flavored now, guys.
I know I keep pausing this video a lot, but I've got a lot to say about this situation. Well, I say situation, this kind of, whole talk about the 1.3 story. I think that a lot of this is to do with patience as well. Obviously, we didn't get a lot from this story. Obviously, it hasn't progressed us much further, apart from being introduced to some new characters, being introduced to some new methods of fighting the lament. I think we definitely did understand a lot more about the Black Shores and the overall lament and how people were trying to fight against it and, what's going on in the world around us, not just in Jinjo, in a little Jinjo bubble, if you got what I mean. I think it was definitely good for understanding the situation, but obviously it didn't move us forwards, which maybe, Rednu was looking forward to moving, the story onwards, which again, I don't think it did. It kind of kept us in the same, kind of place we are. But I think that will be the job for future, updates like 1.4. Hopefully we will see even more story from that. And we'll see, Camellia or someone like that showing us around the Black Shores, showing us what it's all about. And maybe even moving on to a new region or a new kind of storyline or something like that. I think the story is building up to a lot. And maybe for some people, they just want to cut to the chase. Yeah, exactly. I think that's definitely the point. And, some of these gacha games, they do like to kind of spread it out in the versions. And obviously, if this was like Honkai Star Rail, they would have made this into like a 10-hour quest or something like that, which again would have been absolutely crazy. But yeah, I think that they are just spreading it out a lot more. And again, this will be a question for future versions, 1.4, 1.5 if there is one, 1.6 if there is one, version 2.0. We'll be asking the same question later on. Did the story actually, kind of tie everything up? Because again, there is a lot of kind of plot holes and stuff which Cap mentioned and maybe Rednu mentions in this video, which, could be tied up in future quests, but we don't know if there's going to be a future quest. So it will be important to kind of analyze this later on to see if this works. Because again, I don't think this is a 10 out of 10 story or anything. And I definitely think that it's a definitely lower down story if it's just on its own. If this is it and then we just move on and do something else, totally I understand why that's a bad story. And maybe it didn't really move us on. But yeah, again, I think it's just a building block onwards to the 1.4 story and the, future story of Wuthering Waves. But yeah, we can't really tell right now. It didn't move the story forwards, but it did build upwards. It's development instead of addition. Yeah, I think so. I want the old Honkai Star Rail right back. Yeah, true. They did hint in the live stream that lore fans will have a treat. So again, maybe we'll see something in the future. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Blue Raspberry. This is our Blue Raspberry.
Welcome.
It's his main story or character quest. It's a main story, right? And it's basically the quest of that explains Shorekeeper. Just like Jinzi's quest kind of explains her, right? And her origins. But there's a big difference. Are you excited right now to pull her? I've never been like, I only want Shorekeeper just so that she's a replacement for Verena. Her as a character is so vapid.
Okay, so it's still going to pull. I think the story worked, Guys, the story worked. Cool. The story worked. He's going to pull on Shore now. Obviously, Shorekeeper is a very good unit as well. I think that's also why people really want her. Is because, she is just a good other unit if you don't like Verena. So I can see why he still wants to pull her despite the story. She still looks cool despite the story, despite whatever happened, what he thinks about it. But yeah.
Fucking mind-numbingly boring. It is insane. She is like the most arbitrary. That's what it feels like. Her character is arbitrary, completely, sorry, I'm like making up words.
Oh, no?
She's unnecessary.
She's unnecessary.
She is so unnecessary. It's so annoying. This whole thing.
I mean, I can kind of see that. I think like it is kind of, if she wasn't there, it wouldn't really make much of a difference. Obviously, I don't know. We're gonna have to. It's more of a future thing, I don't think we could be like talking about this in 1.3 because we're clearly gonna have more story with the Shorekeeper and more stuff with other characters. So we're gonna have to wait and see what kind of happens with that. Obviously, from 1.3, she could be removed and nothing would really change apart from maybe a cool story in some people's opinion and not in some other people's opinion. But yeah, I definitely think that, the Shorekeeper still has a lot to offer and I think we should definitely give it a chance. And again, we can be having this conversation in future versions to see if it did good. And if it didn't do good and that the Shorekeeper doesn't change, then I totally agree that the story won't be, as good as I first thought it was. If she was playable, it wouldn't do much, but however, in the future, and with the Black Shores, she'll be important without a doubt. Exactly. I definitely think that she will be very important, especially seeing as we saved her. She's
So
obviously
bullshit.
needed for
And
something.
to learn the past of Rover basically being the creator of the shorekeeper, right? Assigning her to this duty. No one should be used as a tool except apparently Rover in her past life thought shorekeeper should be used as a tool, at least for
Yeah.
now, like a pacifier for this
But I
world.
also think that's a cool thing because, again, it's like something to do with her personality. Maybe like the personality of her changed, like just from the amnesia or whatever happened to her, in between. Some people were saying that she got reincarnated or something like that. I don't know if that's true in terms of lore, but again, something happened where she forgot her memories, and maybe older Rover was a completely different person, and that'd be a kind of cool story arc if that does happen. Maybe she thought the shorekeeper was a tool. Maybe she thought that the lament was like a something different. I don't know. Maybe she was a completely different person in her past life, past personality, or whatever, which I think would actually make for a really cool story. But again, it's another thing where we have to wait. I know I keep saying this, but we do have to wait for future versions to have some clarity. If we get to version 2.0 and we get nothing, and she just moves on, then yeah, that's a bad thing. I know I
And
keep
it's
saying
like
that a lot, but
Tethys, in all of its super AI knowledge, it could see no other solution except shorekeeper, except JK at the very end didn't need shorekeeper. Did
again,
not
I
need
think that's just
shorekeeper
because it
at
was
all.
like focused on a
It's
task.
so dumb. It's so fucking insane how mind-numbingly stupid this all was. I would say I really enjoyed it, but it is a train wreck. It is a train wreck. They have cool cutscenes. They have cool cutscenes. They had cool sequences. I love the sequence where we were running across portals as Rover, and like there were trains coming out of it. Of course, like the cinematography, the scenery everything's really cool. But
I definitely think that's one of Wuthering Waves' stronger points, is the overall graphics and the cutscenes that they do. Obviously, it showed a lot of people, especially a lot of MiHoYo fans, this is what you can do, even with a lower budget to Hoyoverse and stuff like that, which I think is great. And I definitely think that, they did cook on that. And I think even the people who didn't like the story agree, including Rednu, that, the graphics and the kind of cutscenes were still great, which I think, is a very important part of the story. Let's just keep going.
Utterly devoid of meaning.
I've been talking too much.
There's no substance there at all. Tethys existed before shorekeeper, so like what was the core then? What did it do? They never asked the questions I want to know. That's a good question. Yeah. Tethys existed for like 10,000 years, witnessed 300,000 laments. I don't know, I probably got the numbers mixed up. But like there's still no solution to a lament, and shorekeeper like did not exist for that long either. So what did it use before? But apparently like shorekeeper must have been the core. She must be. It's so crazy. Like everything here
It's still better than the Genshin sister plot that overforward much since the game's release. Yeah, again,
looks
I
very
definitely think
good.
that plot,
But the writing's
again,
ass.
it's
The
gotten
writing
boring
is
after
ass,
a while.
and I'll tell you what, like 1.1 story, Jinxi's story was so much better. It was so much better because what is Jinxi's story in a nutshell? Jinxi's story is a story of sacrifice. It's basically the story of Christ, right? Jinxi is time Jesus, is time
Jesus
God.
Christ.
She raised time Jesus from birth, Jue did, right? To be able to sort of defeat it, right? Or sacrifice herself, the blood of the lamb, to save the entirety of Jinzhou, to save humanity, right? Because everyone would otherwise die. And so Jinxi's story is compelling. Jinxi's character,
I think that's fair enough as well. I think that like a lot of the story gonna get a bit old if people keep sacrificing themselves. Jinshi obviously sacrificed herself for time, not like death. You get what I mean though. She gave up something for time and the city of Jinzhou, and obviously the shorekeeper tried to give herself up for the Tethys system. So I think it will get boring if they do keep doing this over and over again, which again I agree can get very boring. And I think the Jinshi story was amazing. I think that's up there with the Black Shores as one of the best stories, if not better. So on my opinion, like kind of what I think about this, I think that they are on par with each other and they are as good as each other, which again I don't think there should be kind of any competition between the two. But again, obviously he prefers a lot of this kind of story over the Black Shores, which again is totally fine. And obviously there's a lot of dislikes on this video, but he is entitled to his own opinion at the end of the day, which I think that's fine. I'm enjoying Wuwa very much, almost at UL 66. Jesus Christ. And I've both pulled both Shorekeeper 6 Pity and the Shorekeeper's Weapon 72. Jinshi and Shorekeeper's story are tied for my number one favorite. Yeah, I think that's the opinion of a lot of people. It is kind of, up there. Rednu did mention that he don't like story games, so I don't understand why he's playing a game that he doesn't like much by his own words. I mean, yeah, I mean, some people don't like story games, and that's fine. I don't really like story games to be honest. I do like stories, but it has to be in a different medium, I think. I think games, I like it depends how good you do it. Like as I said in my video, whenever I talked about the Wuthering Waves story, this Black Shore story actually got me interested in a game story for one of the first times in a while. There's been a couple that have had me hooked, like the Penacony story. I did really enjoy that, and also the some of the early Genshin story. Whenever I was first getting into gacha games, I was pretty locked in for that. But like as I got more used to gacha game stories and them all being the same, I'm just there, just like skip, 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 next, 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 because I can't be asked. You know, it's just the same. And I think that the Black Shores definitely was a little bit different for me, and that's why I like it so much, because it did feel a bit different, and I was actually locked into the story better. So I do kind of understand from a point, you know, of him not liking story games, but still giving criticism on the story, because again, I don't like story that much. I do enjoy more of the building aspect and just playing the game and fighting stuff aspect. I do like enjoy a bit of the lore and like reading into it, but again, story games aren't exactly my thing. And you know, games that are entirely story, I almost never play, you know? Or even if I do like download it or something, I don't play it much. But the thing is with Wuthering Waves, it has multiple aspects, so again, everyone can have their own opinion on it, even if they don't like story. I dropped a sub because of Penacony, no skip, no life. Oh, okay, that's fair enough. I mean, some people like different stories, some people don't. Yeah, I thought Penacony was really cool. Again, there were some quests in Penacony that I didn't like, but like some of the initial quests at the start, I really, really enjoyed. And some of the ones near the end where they tried to like fill it out a bit got a little bit boring. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll just skip a couple of this, you know, just click through it kind of thing. But again, I'm not saying that just because he doesn't like story games and stuff like that, or doesn't like the story in games, doesn't mean that, you know, his opinion isn't valid. Obviously, you know, he still has a brain. He can still think about, you know, stuff about the story. So again, I do think that it's important that he does talk about this kind of stuff, even if, you know, as you say, he doesn't like playing games with story. It's so much yapping that I couldn't stand it after, I think it was like 3/4 yeah.
Is compelling.
I can understand
She's
that.
been raised for that
It's
to
bad.
purpose, and you know she shows herself to be a capable leader of Jinzhou time and time again. Shorekeeper literally just says, "I've been there with you forever. Trust me. You know, I've been there from the beginning, guys. I've been here from the start. I've been here since day one. You know."
I did think that was a cool part of the story, though. In my opinion, I thought that, you know, having this kind of old friend thing, because whenever I was playing the story, it did feel like it was someone that, you know, you knew from your past. Like the whole amnesia, kind of forgetting things, forgetting, you know, a lot of memories and stuff. It did kind of feel like that she was like kind of, you know, involved with the rover in a past kind of, you know, whatever memory or something like that, which we obviously don't remember. And I think that they did do that very well. And I did get the overall feeling of that very well. And I enjoyed that. But again, obviously some people don't enjoy that, and obviously it is a very big trope in a lot of video games and also anime and stuff like that as well. Which,
And it's just
you
like,
know,
for
if
sure,
you don't enjoy
it's
that
like,
stuff.
oh my god, it's so annoying. Jin C was great. This was bullshit. Like, at least Jin C's relationship with Rover had developed to some extent. Shorekeeper literally comes out of nowhere and says, "Yo, you made me, by the way. What up? And by the way, we were always together. You and me, baby." She's an artificial human. She's a homunculus. And she's like, "I don't know feelings. What is this that I feel? Sorrow or happiness? Is this love?"
Again, I thought that was kind of a cool part of the story. I thought like an AI kind of learning emotions was kind of cool. But again, each to their own.
So fucking annoying. But she is beautiful and has boobs. That's exactly why Rover has to save her. Because otherwise, how can Rover take a -1 to their harem? How? You can't. You can't. Rover will sooner die than give up any.
The thing is, I think that is also a cool part. I think that having a lot of these kind of characters, you know, surrounded by Rover, and people, you know, did make the point of why do they like Rover so much? Well, it's because they had a past life, and maybe a lot of these characters did know them in their past life and know how special they are and how important they are. Because obviously, whenever you got into Jinzhou, you got greeted as like a special guest, which again, I definitely think is an important part of why a lot of these characters do, you know, are very nice to Rover in the first place. But also, I think like having all these characters around Rover and Rover being a little bit different to a lot of the other MCs that we see in gacha games, I think that's kind of refreshing and that's kind of nice that we have, a character that just doesn't sit there and goes, "Ooh, I need to save my sister," or something like that. Like in Genshin, where they just kind of, not very cool, They're just kind of like sat there like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna go like fight a dragon or something."
Part of her harem.
It's
Oh,
interesting,
you
I
were
think.
here from day one for sure, dude.
Yeah, obviously, yeah,
I'm gonna
Genshin would
save
never
you.
have destroyed.
100%. Oh my god, that whole sequence was like, no, all sacrifices are necessary. It's like, oh my god, that was
Again, I do feel like that was a good part of the story as well.
Gorgeous. It is.
Having a
Props
bit
where
like
it's due.
sacrifices are necessary.
This game looks beautiful.
It does.
The story is shit.
Looking.
The story is shit. The voice acting is shit too. Sorry.
I do agree with that. The voice acting is pretty bad. If you played English, female Rover, it was pretty bad. The scream, I didn't enjoy. A lot of the other voice acting was fine. I think the shorekeeper was good. I do like the fact that they included a British voice actor in there. It was a little bit different to a lot of other gacha games. Obviously, Reverse 1999 uses a lot of British voice actors too. But again, it was cool to see it as a British person. Obviously, maybe some Americans don't like that. And yeah, I definitely think the voice acting could be improved on in the English. Chinese and Japanese, I did look at the cutscene back, like just to see how it compared, because I did want to see, if they messed up with that one too. And to be fair, it was a lot better than the English. And it's definitely come a long way to what we saw in the first version. So I think that's just something that Wuthering Waves can improve on in the future, but I do agree the voice acting wasn't great.
It is. Nation meant to prevent the calamity of mankind. All right, what do we know now? Well, they're a shady organization that's meant to prevent the calamity of mankind. That's it. That's it.
Again, I think that's something that does need to be like addressed in future updates, and I think that's why we need to be patient for future updates. I think, Camellia hasn't even been introduced yet, and obviously it seems like she's going to be introduced in the upcoming updates, obviously probably the one where her banner comes out. So it's going to be an important thing for the story that's upcoming, and maybe even the next one after that, to kind of tie up these knots of, what is the Black Shores all about. Now, obviously there's people kind of, not very happy at the fact that, the first quest about the Black Shores doesn't tell you much about it. But I did really like how it threw you into a big, situation early on in the game, and that you find out later on what it's all about. And I definitely think that's what the future, updates are going to hold. And again, I think it's more of like a building block to the future story, which a lot of games do. We've seen it a lot with Genshin, with Honkai, with so many where like some of the quests, they literally just build up and you don't really get to do much. You don't really get to do anything climactic, which again, can be annoying for some people, but I don't mind it if, the payoff is good at the end. This is anime in the end, so certain things are expected up until now, but we aren't used to this kind of story in gacha that hits some players the wrong way. Yeah, I definitely think that's, yeah.
That is literally it. That's all we know. And that's all we'll never, ever know. Because that's all we need to know about them. More mature theme might be hard to do in a mass mobile game. It is, sure. Like, you could say that. But the thing is Wuthering Waves and the devs, they are so desperate to put everything on the table and tell you why they are the best or why they are worth playing. And so you don't have development. They don't have the confidence to tell a long drawn out story. They don't have the vision.
I mean, that could be true. But again, as I said, this could be a thing to do with updates. Like, maybe they want to, expand a story up to 7 hours or something like that, like Honkai Star did. But at the same time, I think the pacing, having a quick 2.5 hour, maybe 3 hour story, depending on how quick you are at reading, just to kind of, cover up that kind of stuff and then build a building block towards future Black Shore stuff is still good. And I think that saying that there isn't a long drawn out story is kind of wrong. I definitely think that this is just the beginning of the Black Shore story. I definitely think that in the future we will see more about it. And that, yeah, maybe it would have been cooler if they put it in one quest, but in my opinion, it doesn't really matter. And if Kuro Games, if it gives Kuro Games more time to cook with the future Black Shore story, kind of plan more around it, I definitely think that's going to be more beneficial to it. And yeah, again, this is a lot about patience. Honkai Star, I only played Belobog or whatever it's called, and for the first 2 hours or so, a really slow build up. However, it was a really good story-wise. Yeah, exactly. Developers want to make a more dark and depressing story that is about loss, so I think having people like Rover to kill them off for drama later. Yeah, again, I think that, a lot of build-up is very important to a story like this.
Because they're too busy
No,
slurping over the player's dick 24/7. They have to. They have to make you feel like the most important person. Otherwise, they'll lose you.
Yeah, I mean, that is a gacha
Dual
game.
players love that, so it'll never improve. Yeah, they love it. Red TLDR 1.3 for me. So the end of the world was happening. Okay. The lament's coming. The lament's coming, Rover. You must go to the Black Shores, Rover. Oh, by the way, that whole explanation of Hoda not being able to escape the black hole, but then Hoda was the one who brought you to the Black Shores, basically, or who told you that the
it does
lament
get a
was
little bit
coming,
confusing
right?
with that kind of stuff.
So yeah, the lament's coming. The lament's coming. Rover, come to the Black Shores. Rover comes to the Black Shores. Okay. Apparently we need to fix the computer problem. The computer is glitching up Tethys. Tethys, which tells everyone about the lament and warns humanity of the calamity. It's broken. We need to go inside. Because we literally uploaded a virus to Tethys.
Yeah.
That was the most retarded thing. There was a virus that came from Hoda, who was already inside Tethys, and so we uploaded the virus into Tethys, which caused it to fucking go haywire. And oh my god, I totally forgot about that. We literally uploaded something that was within Tethys into Tethys, and apparently that fucked it up, and we had to go in.
I think it does get a bit confusing whenever we get into all this like digital technical kind of talk stuff. It gets like, you know, some developers just kind of don't know where to go with the story and kind of get things all jumbled up, which again, I can totally agree with. You know, it wasn't a very, it didn't really make sense, you know, that kind of stuff happened, which again, does constitute to why I think it's not like a, you know, perfect story or anything. But I still like enjoyed it. I'm sure we are all still in the intro to the overall game for the years to come. Yeah, definitely.
Inside to fix it. Holy shit, that was retarded. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Wuthering Waves 1.3. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Love to hear your guys' thoughts.
Well, yeah, I pretty much gave my thoughts throughout the entire video. That was a very cool video, though. I like it whenever, you know, content creators are very, you know, like honest with their opinions whenever it comes to the story, because people like, you know, there's a lot of people, I think I'm definitely in the majority whenever it comes to saying that the story is good, but it's good that there are people that aren't afraid to just say the story's bad, the story's trash, I hated it, whatever. It's good to see that. And like, it does bring up a lot of important discussions, because if there was no one saying this kind of stuff, especially with a lot of the points he made, obviously you've seen throughout this video, and also there's been other content creators too, there's been some good points that he's actually brought up, which makes me think, oh yeah, the story, yeah, this part of the story actually doesn't make sense. They could have improved on that. But, you know, obviously his take was a little bit more on the extreme side of it. Everything sucked pretty much, which I don't think is right. But I definitely think he brought out a lot of the important parts that, you know, didn't make sense to both of us. And I think that's very cool. And yeah, definitely go watch his video if you guys want to, you know, look back at it. Go give it a like. Go subscribe to him. Rednu's very cool. Yeah, he's a very, very cool, you know, YouTuber. I talked to him many times. I'm not subscribed. This is because I'm on a different account. So I'm subscribed on my other account. I swear to God. I'm sorry, Rednu, if you see this. I am subscribed to my other account. I just don't follow Gacha stuff on this account. But yeah, you can see a lot of people didn't like that. And I can kind of see why, you know, people didn't like that, because people just don't like people bad-mouthing Wuthering Waves. I've done it in the past. I've, you know, brought up my concerns with a lot of stuff to do with Wuthering Waves, whether that's revenue, whether that's story, whether that's characters, whatever. And people aren't happy. They dislike it because they think, oh, you're doom posting. You're saying bad things, which again isn't the case. You know, I don't care. Like, I like Wuthering Waves. You know, believe it or not, I like playing the game. And people just try to make it seem like you're some kind of villain when that's not the case at all. But yeah, overall, very good video. It's very interesting. And obviously, you know, people can disagree on a lot of things to do a story. But also, there was some very, very valid points brought up there, which I definitely think that Kuro Games do need to address in the future. And yeah, that's about it.